Hey, hi, hello, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Alex, and you are here at the Farm D Reads, and today we are gonna do my October wrap up. So let's just do it. I'm tired of these long ass intros. The first book that I read in October was Holly by Stephen King, and this was a wildly anticipated release for me, so I was really happy that I was able to get it in. Holly follows our main character, Holly Gibney, who shows up in a few other Stephen King novels, but not as like the absolute main character. She's more of a secondary character, and this is her first full-length feature novel where she is the main character, and we get a lot of her inner monologue and her thoughts and her POV as she's grappling with both the mystery that she's trying to solve as a private investigator and also with the recent death of her mother from COVID. Her mother was a non-believer in the vaccine and ends up catching the illness and expiring from it. So we have to deal with Holly's like really long-seated issues with her parents, with her mom especially, who she really kind of blames for a lot of her social issues as she has now later in her life. So our setting is Holly's town, kind of like after the first few waves of the pandemic, and we're picking up with her as she's trying to figure out a series of missing people in the town. We find out really early on in the book who the bad guys are, and it ends up being an elderly couple that works at the local college. They're professors, so like the last two people that you would ever imagine are kidnapping people and killing them, and we're following Holly as she tries to solve it. So we already know we're getting POVs from both Holly and the two professors. We also get to see two of our favorite characters again, Jerome and Barbara Robinson, who show up in Mr. Mercedes. I really wanted to absolutely love this book and give it 5 stars. Unfortunately, I just cannot deal with books that are set during pandemic times. I was in the middle of COVID at my retail job as a pharmacist, and it completely burnt me out, and it was horrible, and it was really trying, and both the healthcare side of things and also like the humanity side of things were just bad, and I was getting both of it. So now to be reading books a few years kind of out of the worst of it that are set in those times, it really is triggering for me. I just kind of wish that Stephen King had left commentary on that out of Holly, but at the same time, I also understand how easily it fits with her personality traits. She's very OCD, she's very neurotic, she's definitely on the spectrum. So she deals with a lot of issues that, you know, neurotypical people don't deal with. And to imagine having those issues in the middle of a pandemic, and then your mom passes away from it because she doesn't believe in science and in medicine, I can understand why he chose that time. Unfortunately, it just didn't work for me. I still gave this 3 stars because I just love Stephen King, and like as you can see, I still tabbed. I actually have a tab. One of my tabs is all the times, hold on, Stephen King writing, but there are some absolutely hysterical annotations in here that I would like to share, if you will bear with me. I spoke to this a little bit in a previous video that I did about how I absolutely love Stephen King, but he writes like a 60/70 something year old dad living in Maine. Like he is one, therefore he writes like one. And I started picking up examples because I wanted to be able to come back in a later video, aka this one, and kind of show examples of what I mean by his particular style of writing. And this is a top tier example. This is a quote from a real character in this book. "He must have been terrific in the sack, a real 60-minute man." And my annotation literally says, "You've done too much now, Steve." I'm unwell. That is very funny of me. I really had I had a really good time reading this, so that's why it gets, oh my God. Okay. So the other issue that I had, besides the fact that this book was set during a time of my real life that I don't want to think about anymore if I don't have to, he brought up the vaccine so specifically, so many times, in such weird ways. Okay, so in this scene, Holly has just given someone CPR, and is talking about like rinsing her mouth out or whatever. And she says, I don't know if even a double dose of Pfizer would stand up to that kind of soul kiss. And my annotation is, it's giving to mentors, but with a viral load. Can we just... I'm funny. I think that's funny. Okay, I'm digressing quite a bit. It was 3 stars. If he writes more books about Holly, I will pick them up and read them. It lost stars for me really, really, really heavily because of the setting and because of all the talk of, again, something that I worked in the middle of with the public and was scared for my own safety for literally 2 years straight. And I got out of it. I don't want to think about it anymore. And also to speak to the fact that we know who the bad guys are and we're getting like the 2 POVs, I found nothing entertaining about that. There was no mystery to solve. There was no suspense. There was no tension. You know what's happening. You're just waiting for Holly to figure out what's happening. So, it was fine. It was good. I would definitely still read more about Holly Gibney because she's my girl. She's a great character. And I really actually enjoy the way that Stephen King writes this female character, surprisingly. So 3 stars for this. Also, the cover is great. It's really great. And I think I matched my tabs pretty nicely. So 3 stars for Holly. The next book that I read in October is Remember Me, The Return by Christopher Pike. And this is the 2nd book in a trilogy that is called the Remember Me series. And this follows our main character, Sherry Cooper, who in book 1 dies. And we follow her ghost, basically trying to figure out what happened to her. She doesn't believe that she really would have yeeted herself off of this building like everyone is saying that she did. She was a perfectly happy girl. Book 2, she gets allowed to return to Earth in the body of somebody else. And they refer to this as being a wanderer. So in this one, we're getting her story as she's like coming back to the mortal realm. I picked this series back up a few months ago and started it because I had a fever dream remembering that I read this when I was like 9 or 10 years old and loving it. And I just was feeling something nostalgic. So I went and picked them up and they haven't aged very well. Also, I'm 20 something years older than the last time I read them, so that makes a difference. But they're really fun. They're really short. The covers that they have come out with now, I think, are really a lot better than the original ones. They're just fun. I gave it 3 stars. I literally read it in one day. I mean, there's nothing to it. It's got like 100 and something 200 pages, almost exactly. There's one more book in the series. I have it on my shelf. I'll definitely be getting to it before the end of the year. And it's okay. I don't recall there being so much religion talk and conversations about spirituality and if God is real and things like that. And that's not really my bread and butter, but again, the nostalgia vibes are immaculate. Christopher Pike is great and I'm really enjoying it. And I think the next Christopher Pike that I want to pick up is the Last Vampire series, which I also remember being really good. And I'm like, oh, there was a romance involved, but now I'm just wondering if my little 10-year-old brain didn't understand what romance was. So we're gonna see. But this was 3 stars. Book 1 was 3 stars. I mean, I'm reading them for the nostalgia. It's fun. The next book that I read in October is Butcher and Blackbird by Bryn Weaver, and this is a serial killer meets serial killer romance available on Kindle Unlimited, I believe is where I read it. I definitely read it on my Kindle. I'm pretty sure it was Kindle Unlimited. And I really enjoyed this. I ended up giving it 3 stars, which I'm actually a little disappointed about because I was really, really into it up until about halfway through. And then I think I took a few days off from reading it and started reading something else and then kind of like lost my attention span for this one. I think that's why I ended up giving it 3 stars. It really felt like it was gonna be a 5-star for me at the beginning, so I might reread it when the next one comes out. It is gonna be a trilogy. This book follows our 2 main characters, Sloane and Rowan, who are each in their own areas of the country serial killers, kind of like Dexter style, so they only murder people that are already terrible people. They vet them, they have their own set of certain moral codes that they follow, and through a chance encounter, they end up meeting each other. And of course, it's like a sparks fly and still love type of thing, but they're both being very quiet about it. They end up starting this bet. Over the next few years, we follow them honoring this bet where every year they try to kill the same bad person, and whoever kills them first wins. And over those challenges and over the years, we get to know them. We get to know their friends, their family. Rowan has 2 brothers that I think will be the main characters potentially for books 2 and 3. It's got spice. It's got happy ending. It's got dual POV, which I love. I always end up loving the main male characters' POV more than the females, but I thought that this one, both POVs were great. And I really do think that the only reason I gave it 3 stars was because I kind of like lost my attention span for it. I did also not love how jarring the timeline was. Like from one chapter to the next, we would jump ahead a year and you'd have to read a few pages to kind of figure out that's where you were in the timeline. I don't want to work too hard for my romances, so I didn't really love that. But I thought it was really fun. Dexter is one of my all-time favorite shows, and this gives Dexter, but with romance and some pretty decent spice. Really enjoyed this. I will definitely be picking up the rest of the books in the trilogy, and fingers crossed that it's going to be following his brothers because they sound like dreamy, dreamy, dreamy characters. The next book that I read in October is Dead 11 by Jimmy Giuliano, and if you watched my Sunday Reset vlog, you know how I felt about this. This was 2 stars for me. A very disappointing 2-star read. This was one of my most anticipated releases for spooky season. I've talked about it in a couple of other videos, I think at this point. This will be the last time you see it in my hands and I talk about it. I actually had to pull it out of my donate pile. I hope whoever gets their hands on this absolutely loves it and it goes to a new home. It's appreciated. Unfortunately, it will not be my home. This follows our main character, Willow, whose son is no longer with us, and she discovers the name of Clifford Island written under a rug in his bedroom and follows that clue all the way to the island itself. We then pick up with a dual POV currently of her brother Harper, also at the island, now trying to figure out what has happened to her because he hasn't heard from her. She's disappeared. So we're kind of following 2 different timelines on the same island. The present with Harper trying to figure out what happened to his sister, and also with Harper throughout her time on the island prior to her disappearance. This is blurbed by R.L. Stine as being really creepy, and it's supposed to be horror with like a huge 90s twist of this island is living same day over and over in 1994, which is the day that O.J. Simpson did his like Ford Bronco chase. Like throughout the book, there's many mentions of Harper and or Willow walking through the town and seeing the car chase on in the bar, or it's on in people's homes, or the same basketball game from the 90s is on. The kids dress really weird. But all the islands and all like the mainland that's not really that far from this island are completely normal. And the children on the island interact with those other children via like sports and stuff like that. Because you also get, there's a third POV, unnecessarily, of Lily Becker, who is a high school student that we're also following. She plays basketball, and that's how we get kind of a POV of one of the younger kids kind of growing up on this weird island. And they interact with other kids who see them as being a bunch of weirdos. So anyway, we have a couple of different mysteries to solve. What really happened to Willow's son? What happens to Willow through Harper? What's going to happen to Lily? And guess what? Nothing. There is no tension in this. There's no horror. There's nothing. It's 400 and something pages of just nonsense, in my opinion. And I really thought the 90s vibes were going to be immaculate, and they were not. It force-fed you everything. Like, the clothes that the kids were wearing, like dungarees, and I didn't like this at all. Thought that I enjoyed when books ended up having a supernatural twist. I don't. And this one, the supernatural twist was garbage. It was predictable. I don't know. I hate to be mean about a book, but I wasted a lot of time reading this for nothing to happen. Yeah. So, I don't know. The supernatural twist in this ends up being that there are dead things that try to lure you into the woods, and the reason that everyone is doing the same shit on the same day is because they're trying to keep the island from getting exterminated by these dead things. And it turns out that this has happened a couple of other times before, which of all people, Lily, the high schooler, figures out before everybody else. Okay. it's just nonsensical. It doesn't make it just wouldn't. Someone on the mainland would do a welfare check like this. Like there's yeah, I don't know. It just, when I get frustrated about a book, I don't know how to like get my thoughts together. And also I kind of forgotten / blocked out everything that happened in this book. So this was 2 stars. I'm a little disappointed. I don't know if I'll be reading anything else from this author because I really, really viscerally disliked this with my entire mind, body, and soul. 2 stars. I will be donating it, and I hope that whoever picks it up loves it or hates it as much as I do. Either way, come follow me, come like this video, subscribe, let me know how you feel about it. Luckily, the next book that I read was a 5-star, and that's Two Twisted Crowns by Rachel Gillig, and this is the sequel to One Dark Window, which came out last year and was actually not only my favorite read of 2022, but it was also the first picture that I posted on my Bookstagram, which I will link down below. It is at the Farm D Reads if you want to follow me over there as well. Shameless plugging. I loved this. This was an amazing end to the story. I thought it tied up everything really nicely. I can't remember if I've ever read a duology. I always feel like I gravitate towards trilogies at the very least, or really, really, really long series that have lots of books to go through. This was perfect in my opinion, and I'm really surprised that that was my opinion because something that really changes from book 1 to book 2 is our POVs and the characters that we're following. Book 1 follows Elspeth, who is living with what's called the nightmare in her head. And in this book, we kind of get more of the nightmare than Elspeth, and we also get not her love story with Raven anymore, as like we don't get as much of her and Raven's love story as we did in book 1, but we do get a great love story between Elm and her cousin Ione, and I loved it. I loved it so much. I thought it was a really great ending to the book. We get a lot of backstory about the Shepherd King. We see some of our characters rise up to the positions that they were always meant to have. We also get a little bit more about the magic system, which are the Providence cards. We learn how they were created, who created them, what he had to give up to create them, what happens to him. And I just think the mythology, the magic system, the setting, the fairy tale vibes, the romance, the ending, I thought it all worked really, really well. And I can't wait to see more from this author. I'm not even, like, I don't have much to say because you just need to read One Dark Window and this book. They are by far 2 of my favorite fantasy reads that I've ever read in my whole life, and I'm looking forward to like a year from now and binge rereading them and tabbing them. They're perfect, and the covers are really great. Fairy Loot is coming out with their version of Two Twisted Crowns, and I do have the Fairy Loot version of One Dark Window, so I'm really hoping I'll be able to get my hands on that and complete my little collection. But absolute 5-star read. Highly recommend One Dark Window and Two Twisted Crowns, and cannot wait to see more from this author. We're back to another 2-star read. Next book that I read in October is Assistant to the Villain by Hannah Nicole Mayer, and again, I have talked about this book in other videos, so really disappointing. I need to do a video of like predictions, like when I have a stack of books or a haul, like go through and predict what I think my rating will be and then come back after I've read them, because it is hilarious to me that I also thought this was going to be a 5-star for me, like Dead 11, and it was a generous 2-star. So this book follows Evie Sage, who is down on her luck, and she lives in a kingdom where there's a supervillain, and he's like the Disney character style villain of the town, and he's menacing, and he's the reason behind all the bad stuff that happens. And of course he ends up being an absolute babe. She runs into him in the woods, and he offers her a job as his assistant, so she becomes the assistant to the villain. And we follow them trying to deal with, they think there's a mole like in his, he basically has this whole castle hidden where he has like, it's like The Office but a fairy tale but poorly written. Oh, I hate to say it. I believe this book is spawned by a series of TikToks that the author did, kind of like hashing out this story, and it got a really good response. I have not myself watched them. I'm not really a TikToker. This is the novel that she wrote based on the story from the TikToks. I think if she had maybe sat on her idea for a little bit longer, fleshed it out a little bit more, perhaps had a better editor, this would have been a much, much, much better read. It was still fun. The characters I did not connect with. I thought the jokes were really cringy. It feels young, and it also is not an adult fantasy romance by any means at all. The romance is barely there, in my opinion, and it also ends on a cliffhanger. I don't think I'll be continuing on with this series, unfortunately, and this will also be going in my donate pile. It does give good fairy tale vibes, and I think it's a really fun idea. I just think the author, needed to flesh out her TikTok thing a little bit longer before she went right to writing it. It just feels young, too young. The writing feels young, the characters feel young, and I'm just tired of books being touted as one thing and then I spend my time reading them for that vibe and they don't give that vibe. And I'm sorry, I just can't do YA anymore. I don't think ever again. I don't know. I think these characters were in their 20s, but they read like they were 17-year-old high schoolers. Also, sometimes the male love interest will be what saves me, but I didn't even care for him. There was nothing about him that was endearing. And then also we almost halfway through the book start getting his... No, not halfway. I'm being aggressive. We start getting his POV 100 pages in, and it's just weird and jarring. No, I guess I'm making that up. We get his POV a lot. I just didn't care for this. It's 2 stars. I don't really have anything else to say about it. It's going in my donate pile. Goodbye. The next book that I read in October is Rouge by Mona Awad, and this book has been absolutely everywhere. The Mona Awad hype is always real whenever she comes out with a new one. I did read Bunny either earlier this year or last year, I don't remember, and I don't know what happened. I don't know what it was about. It was a fever dream, but it was a really enjoyable fever dream, and I liked it a lot. So I picked this up. I listened to it on audio at work, and it just dragged forever and ever and ever. So I'm reading the Goodreads right now. From the critically acclaimed author of Bunny comes a horror-tinted gothic fairy tale about a lonely dress shop clerk whose mother's unexpected death sends her down a treacherous path in pursuit of youth and beauty. Fairy tale? On what planet? Okay. I also gave this 2 stars. I guess I didn't really have that good of a reading month now that I'm going over them. I didn't care for this. I would say that it being a gothic fairy tale about a lonely dress shop clerk is absolute nonsense. That almost sounds like it's giving a Sleeping Beauty Cinderella type of a vibe. And this is not a gothic fairy tale. It's about a cult, very clearly on from the beginning. Oh, it's a fever dream. It's a fever dream about a cult. And the main theme ends up being our main character, Belle, grappling with trauma from her childhood, meeting up with the trauma of her mother's death, which is suspicious in and of itself because the mom was also working with this beauty cult that Belle finds herself entrenched in. It's all predictable. I remember reading Bunny and feeling like I had no idea where it was going or what was going to happen, but this book was completely obvious from the beginning. And it was just kind of a commentary on daughters and their relationships with their mothers, which I don't have one of those relationships anymore as a personal choice. So I didn't want to read about it at all. Again, you read a synopsis, you think it's going to be based on this theme, or this will be the major theme, and then you read it and it's not. What are you gonna do? You give it 1 or 2 stars, you move on. You talk about it in your YouTube video. I didn't care for this. I don't know if I'll keep reading Mona Awad. Her writing is very captivating and very lyrical and very beautiful. Just don't know if I care to spend my time piecing out a fever dream. And I really didn't like the topics and the themes that we discussed in this one, so whatever. 2 stars. I would like to know, if you've read this book, your feelings about it in the comments, because it's getting a lot of really good reviews. And I just want to know if you liked it, why you liked it. You know why I didn't like it now, so let's chat about this one. The next book that I read in October was my only, I think, actual spooky Halloween October themed read that I even got to in the month of October, and that is Slooh Foot by Brahm, which I absolutely loved and gave 5 stars. I'm laughing internally and externally at the fact that every book in this wrap-up has either been 2 stars or 5 stars and barely any in between. That's just the month that I had, I guess. This was so good. It follows our main character, Abatha, who has come over from England to marry this guy. She lives in the town and she's very outspoken, which in 1600s Puritan New England, you should be careful because witches. And we follow her spiral into this really crazy companionship with the devil, presenting as a goat man and all his little woodland creatures that are trying to get him to remember who he really is. There's a lot of Native American influence in this, which I really enjoyed. And it also has pictures, which are really, really, really cool. Like, what is this? Haunting ass shit. I loved it. I loved it. The imagery is beautiful. It's lush. It gives autumn in New England, but Salem, Massachusetts, New England. It's very witchy. It's very spiritual. There's a lot of scenes that take place in the forest. You get a lot of, like, these little woodland creatures are like the servants of the devil, but they are acting like they're little cute things, but they're actually absolutely horrifying. Like, I loved it. I instantly want to read everything by this author. He has a book called Krampus with a wild, wild, wild cover that I'm really excited to hopefully get to for Christmas. And yeah, the hype is real on this one. I really enjoyed it. It was the perfect witchy read. What I especially loved about this is how flawlessly the author weaved the setting of Puritan religious pilgrim New England with this woman's fierce defiance of that. And if you've ever taken a history class, that's why women got burnt at the stake as witches, because they just were trying to be equal in a society that viewed them as less. And I think the author did a really good job kind of making this like a feminist Satan in the woods fever dream. I loved this. It's great. I'm really glad I bought a copy. I thought that I was also going to hate the size of it holding it, but it's just like the most delightful floppy paperback with like great artwork. It also has, there's a lot of imagery of spiders. It has these little spider cartoons in between the paragraphs, which I think spiders are really cool, so I liked it. Oh my gosh, look at this, like, the chapter art is fantastic. I absolutely loved it. 5 stars, highly recommend, a great witchy read any time of the year. Last 2 books that I read in October, I'm going to group together because they are part of a series that I have become obsessed with, and it is Orphan X and the Nowhere Man by Greg Hurwitz. I am 1000% in my dad thriller era. I don't know how it happened, but I'm so happy that it's happening. I got this recommendation from Olivia Reads a Latte. She was reading like the most recent book that had just came out, like number 9 or 10, and was talking about it. The main character, Evan Smoke, what his deal is, what he's into, and I was like, that sounds cool. I tried reading the first few pages on my Kindle and I wasn't super into it, but then at work I saw that it was on my Scribe subscription, so I was like, I'll try listening to it. And since then, I have read 6 of them. I think I'm on number 7 of the audiobooks. They're fantastic. We follow our main character, Evan Smoke, who is part of the Orphan program, which is this incredibly classified, like, black ops shadow government type system in place where they pluck kids from like orphanages or foster homes, kids that like essentially no one's gonna miss, and they train them to be these basically killing machine assassins. There's no record of them. They don't know where they've come from. Evan Smoke didn't even have his real last name. Smoke is the name that his caretaker Jack, who ends up being a father figure to him, gives him. And we follow him now as he's out of the program, and he's known as the Nowhere Man. So what he does is helps people with his particular skill set that need his help for free. So we follow him kind of navigating life outside of the Orphan program, and obviously, like every book, there's been some new catastrophe that he has to figure out. We've met lots of different characters that he's helped. We've met people from his past coming back to the present, and I just can't get enough of this series. And actually, just before I recorded this video, Goodreads finally did something useful for once and showed me a recommendation called the Gray Man series, which is kind of similar, like dad thriller, assassin dude, just like John Wick's everybody for 15 books. So if you think I won't be trying that one after this, you're wrong. because I will be. I'm just in my dad thriller season and I'm absolutely loving it. I'm also making my way through the Will Trent series by Karen Slaughter, which is more like crime fiction but still very dad thrillery, and I'm just loving it. I'm just loving it so much. So that is finally the end of my October wrap up. I hope that you enjoyed watching this video. I hope you'll consider liking and subscribing. If you read any of these books, let's talk about it in the comments. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, leave them down below as well. I'm here, I'm available. And I can't wait to see you guys in the next video. Thank you again. Bye.